If you were with us last week, you know that we began to look at the traveling songbook that the Jews apparently used as they made way to Jerusalem for their feast celebrations. And apparently these songs were sung in the journey. We looked at Psalm 121, and we learned from that psalm that there is a reality with which we live, and that is that God is always going to take care of us. And that was expressed in a number of ways in that psalm. For example, the fact that God is on my side means that I can always trust God to be there as a shelter. The fact that God never sleeps means that God is always there for my security. The fact that God is my shadow means that God is my stability, that He's always there for me. And the fact that God is always steadfast means that I always have the safety of the Creator behind me. So we looked at that psalm and we evaluated some of those things. These ascent psalms, I thought I could maybe just preach one and move on. But the more I went through and I thought, well, which, and there was another one that just kind of stood out really strongly. And I thought, I really need to at least do this one more. So I'll read it, share it, first of all, from the Message, which is extremely wordy and much different than any translation that you probably read, unless you read the Message once in a while. But it does perhaps open our minds to understanding a little differently the content of this psalm. Help, God. The bottom has fallen out of my life. Master, hear my cry for help. Listen hard. Open your ears. Listen to my cries for mercy. If you, God, kept records on wrongdoings, who could stand a chance? As it turns out, forgiveness is your habit, and that's why you're worshipped. I pray to God, my life a prayer, and wait for what He'll say and do. My life on the line before God, my Lord, waiting and watching till morning, waiting and watching till morning. O Israel, wait and watch for God. With God's arrival comes love. With God's arrival comes generous redemption. No doubt about it, He'll redeem Israel, buy back Israel from captivity of sin. We're going to unearth three different truths from the verses that are contained in this psalm. And I want to begin with the first one. And the first point is that we are sinking in the deep. We are sinking in the deep. You may want to argue with that. Some of you are not going to want to argue with that. Some of you are realizing very well that things are drowning you. They are surrounding you. But others may think, well, no, I had a pretty good week. Things are going pretty well. No, we're all sinking in the deep. That's the reason this psalm is written, because we all have the same condition. Let me begin by trying to recall and try to remember that when I was in college, I took a swimming class, and the closing final of this class was we had to engage in certain water activities. And what I recall is that one of the things we had to do is we had to swim laps utilizing all the different swimming strokes that we had learned. So we had to do the breaststroke, the backstroke, the butterfly, all of these different techniques that we had learned. Josh is saying, I can't imagine you swimming, Dan. But then the second thing we had to do is we had to tread water for 10 minutes, which, again, being in water where your feet don't touch, is panicky for me. I don't know about the rest of you. And treading water for 10 minutes was a little stressful. But the worst activity, the one with which I labored and struggled the most, was we had to do what was then identified as a survival float for 30 minutes. And that third one, we were taught and we learned that people in oceans can survive and not utilize body energy and survive for great lengths of time if they learn this survival float. And so we were instructed in the technique of this survival float. What it meant for the final, though, was that we had to jump into the York Community Center pool fully clothed. Now, that had not happened up to this point. So here we are, and you could kick your shoes off once you got in, but you had to go in with shoes. So we're fully clothed, and that automatically changes at least my relationship with water, to have additional things absorbing more water. And then what we had to do, and I don't remember the technical term, I'm going to use the word pike because that's what it's called in some sports. We had to assume this posture where your legs went straight down, and you piked your body, and you put your face into the water. And you did this while you released slowly your breath. And then when you ran out of breath, your arms are extended ahead of you. You were to bring your arms down to your legs, raise your head, get a breath of air, and then go back down. And then you would repeat. You would exhale slowly until you had no more air. Then you would do this, and you'd bring yourself up. And we had to do that for 30 minutes. Now, I kind of swim like a rock anyhow. And if I'm moving, I feel like I'm safe. But to just sit there and try to do this survival float was a drastic thing for me. The trick was that you had to train yourself to avoid this sense of panic and terror. That really was the trick of that whole exercise. If you could become peaceful with this survival float, we were assured that you could survive for a long time and hopefully be rescued if that ever was the case. As I think about that in a spiritual sense, most of us have become very proficient at doing just that. We've become very proficient at our own survival floats. We attempt to become comfortable with our surroundings and function within the strength of our own survival strategies. In other words, I know how to stay afloat. I can encounter almost anything. I can be thrown into almost any situation, and I can still survive. I know how to handle it. I have learned. And what actually I think happens to us is we risk desensitizing ourselves to the fact that we are sinking in the depths, because what we're doing is trusting our own survival techniques. Let me illustrate it this way. Farmer Joe took on a trucking company in court for bodily injuries, which he had received when a semi-trailer collided with his pickup and trailer. On the stand, the farmer is being questioned by an eloquent company attorney. And the attorney says, "Did you say at the scene of the accident, 'I am fine'?" Farmer Joe says, "Well, let me tell you what happened. I had just loaded my mule Bessie into and the lawyer interrupts. And he says, 'I did not ask for details. Just answer the question. Did you, at the scene of the accident, say, 'I am fine'?" To which Farmer Joe began, "Well, I got Bessie into the trailer, and we were driving down the road, and with this, the lawyer turned to the judge, and he says, 'Judge, would you please instruct the witness to answer the question?'" Well, the problem was the judge said, "Well, I'd rather hear what Joe has to say." So Joe began to recount. He said, "I was traveling down the highway when a semi-truck ran a stop sign. It smacked my truck right in the side. I was thrown into the ditch on one side, and Bessie was thrown into the ditch on the other side. I could hear her groaning, and I knew she must be in rough shape, but I was too banged up to get to her." He then said, "A highway patrolman arrived. I heard him walk over to Bessie, and I heard the gunshot. The patrolman came over to me, and he said, 'Your mule was in such bad shape, I had to put her down. How are you feeling?' It was then, Your Honor, that I said, 'I'm doing fine.'" A humorous story with a pointed spiritual lesson. We've been encountering each other in foyer foyer talk for a few moments probably already this morning. And how many of us have pulled a Farmer Joe? Doing fine. Well, maybe we are. But you see, what happens is we develop the ability to look good even amid the most painful and destructive moments of our life. And what that means is we're denying the fact that we're sinking to the depths. What motivates us to that kind of evasive mindset? Why is it that it's so difficult for us to admit our need? Oh, there are many contributing things, but let me just share one with you. I think one of the reasons is because we've become so good at the survival float. We've become good at surviving what comes to us. And lo and behold, what happens is we begin to trust in our ability. And so this psalm begins with this reality. We're sinking into the depths. Coming to a complete comprehension of our own depth of incompetence may be more painful than the turmoil we tolerate.